No. This way, yeah. Hey. This part stays in the back. Yeah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, dear elders, Alhamdulillah, we're continuing with the Shama'il, the beautiful description and the details of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And inshallah, as we have always been mentioning, let us inshallah listen with an open heart, with an open mind. Let us listen with the ears of mahabba and love towards our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as we have been mentioning, respected brothers and sisters, anything that is related to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is beloved to a believer. Whether it was his hair, whether it was his dressing, whether it was his beard, whether it was his turban, whether it was his armor, whether it was his helmet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Every aspect of his life, it's beloved to us. And every time you hear it, the more you hear about the Prophet alayhi salam, it should increase your love for him. And subhanallah, that's why we see, for an ordinary person, someone were to come outside, someone who doesn't know about Islam, someone who doesn't know about deen, if they were to come in here and listen to the things that we're discussing, you learn about this man's hair, you learn about this man's sandals, you learn about this man's clothing, the type of cloth he tied around his head. What is all this about, and why are you guys so interested in this? What makes you happy about listening to this? Subhanallah. As believers, as Muslimin and Muslimat, Mu'mineen wal Mu'minat, every aspect of the Prophet ﷺ is beloved to us. And that's why the companions radiallahu anhum, they would say, the more we see him, the more we fall in love with him. The more we mix with him, each time our gaze falls upon his face, the more beautiful he becomes. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So same for us, dear brothers and sisters. The more you read about him, the more you learn about him, the different angles you see in his life, the different lights that are shining in the different perspectives of how he lived, the more beauty you uncover, the more reason you have to love him. The more you learn about him, the more reason you have to love him. For some people, if all we know, his name was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was from the Quraysh, he was the last and final prophet of Allah, he went through a lot of hardships for the ummah, mashallah, that's good. You love him for that. But that's all you know to love him about. The more things you know, the more you could imagine him, the more you know about what he stood for, the more you can picture him, the more he comes into your imagination, that is the deeper and stronger that your love can be for him. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So remember, let us inshallah keep this in mind. This is the purpose of the Shama'il of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So without further delay, we'll get into the first chapter for tonight. Babu ma ja'a fi sifati imamatin Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is the chapter with regards to the turban, the imama of Sayyiduna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The first hadith, عن جابر رضي الله عنه, Jabir radiallahu anhu says that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he entered Makkah on the day of the conquest, and on his blessed head sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there was a black turban, a black imamah. So on Fath Makkah, when Makkah was conquered and the Prophet ﷺ entered, he was wearing a black turban. Now I want to shift your attention towards something that we learned last week. It came in the hadith last week. that when Rasulullah ﷺ entered Makkah on the day of the conquest, on the day when Makkah was conquered by the Muslims, what did it say was on his head? Anyone remember? Who remembers? What was on the head of Rasulullah ﷺ when he entered Makkah? A helmet. Rasulullah ﷺ was wearing a helmet, armor. Most people didn't remember. Maybe last week you guys were wearing the helmets. It was covering the ears. So look, one hadith which we did last week, it says Rasulullah ﷺ was wearing a helmet at the conquest of Makkah. Now today's hadith is saying what? That the Prophet ﷺ entered Makkah and he was wearing a black turban. So subhanallah, on the outset and apparent, it looks like there's what between both hadith? It looks like there's an apparent contradiction. So non-Muslims, Orientalists, people who don't have a deep understanding of the religion, when they see things like this, what will they say? Hadith is not really reliable. Because look, one hadith said conquest of Makkah, he was wearing a helmet. Now the next hadith is saying conquest of Makkah, he was wearing a black turban. So which one is it? Was he wearing a black turban or was he wearing a helmet? See, the hadith, they contradict each other. They're not really reliable. Na'udhu billah. This is why we get a group of people in the Muslim ummah. Wallahu a'lam, if you want to call them part of it or not. That's a subject on its own. But you get a group of people, they try and detach Islam from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say as long as you follow the Quran, you're good to go. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we're not so sure. You know, the hadith about Makkah, turban is there, helmet is there, we're not really sure if these things are reliable or not. Na'udhu billah. With a little bit of aql, with a little bit of intelligence, using a little bit of logic, all of these things have been answered by the scholars of hadith. Yes, are there hadith that are not reliable? Sure, there are. But the ulama and the scholars of this ummah, what did they sacrifice their whole lives for? What did they give their whole lives for? 1400 years, the scholars of this ummah, day and night, subhanallah, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, rahimahullah. I want us all to understand what sacrifices these hadith came to us by. What sacrifices our deen has reached us through. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, rahmatullah alayh, he was one of the prime students of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. So some of the people, they would see that at night time, after Isha, Muhammad ibn Hassan is awake, he's not asleep. 12 o'clock, Muhammad ibn Hassan is still awake. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, Muhammad ibn Hassan, the lantern in his light is still on. 3, 4, 5, all the way till Fajr, Imam Muhammad rahmatullah alayh is awake in his room. So the students and the people, they asked and they said, Imam Muhammad, the night is long. Some of it you make ibadah. We see some of it you can study. But a little bit you should sleep. Don't stay the whole night awake in ibadah. Spend some of it for sleep. This is so hard and difficult for you. We don't want to see you go through such difficulties. You know what Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani said? He said, "Oh respected student, the entire ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, they sleep comfortably at night. Because they're thinking in their minds, if we ever have a masala, if there's ever a difficult ruling, we have Imam Muhammad, we're going to ask him." He said, the ummah sleeps comfortably in reliance upon me. That's why I have to remain awake and do what? I have to study the books, I have to read, I have to learn, I have to collect all of the masail. This is how the ulama of the past 1400 years, they lived their lives to preserve these hadith. They know which one is authentic, which one is unreliable, which one is reliable, which one we take, which one we don't take. Some people, 1400 years legacy of preservation of our deen, they throw it in the garbage by saying what? Well, there's an apparent contradiction, throw it all in the garbage. Na'udhu billah. We don't throw it in the garbage. You read and you investigate and you learn. So subhanallah, look, you use a little bit of common sense. There are 3 ways we answer this apparent contradiction. How many? 3 ways. So look, if there are 3 answers where you can reconcile between the 2 hadiths, would we rather take the 3 interpretations to reconcile, or are we going to ignore them and go to the 4th? And what's the 4th? No, hadith is just not reliable. Throw them all away. Na'udhu billah. Number 1, an iron helmet which is made of, it's an armor, it's steel, it's iron, it's very hard. Sometimes, I wear this kind of topi. I wear this kind of kufi, nice soft cotton. And sometimes what happens? I get a headache. Imagine wearing iron on your head. And there's heat. You're running around, you're moving, you're on a horse, cling clang. It's not comfortable on the head. So one interpretation is that Rasulullah ﷺ, he wore the black imama, and then on top of it, he wore the helmet. So the black imama was sticking out, but underneath it, he was wearing, and then on top was the helmet. So this was kind of like a padding also, so that the iron helmet is now going to be comfortable on the head of the Prophet ﷺ. That's one interpretation. Second interpretation is what? Rasulullah ﷺ wore the helmet. On top of the helmet, he wore the black imama. Possibly it could have helped keep the helmet in place when he tied the imama on top of it. And lastly, respected listeners, very straightforward. Little bit of logic. That's why they say, the statement in Urdu, what do they say? Ek man ilm ke liye, do man aql chahiye. Which basically means, for one measurement of knowledge, the books, the hadith, the Quran, for one measurement of knowledge, it takes 2 measurements of common sense and logic. Right? You have to come back to just basic, use your brains. Right? So the third interpretation, respected listeners, when there's a war, when there's a battle, when there's a conquest, is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? There you go from one place, you march to the place, you're on horseback, you enter, and then there's the preliminary battles, and then there's getting supplies, and then there's setting up camp. Battles can take, we've known in history, battles sometimes taken years. So yes, the Prophet ﷺ, when he entered Makkah, at one point he was wearing the helmet. When things were safe and things got better, Rasulullah ﷺ removed the helmet, and what did he do? He put on the black turban. So both narrations are correct in its place. The Prophet ﷺ, at the conquest of Makkah, he was wearing a helmet, and at some times in the conquest of Makkah, he was also wearing the black turban. And subhanAllah, one thing we also learn from this is that the Prophet ﷺ, in the wearing of the imama, you can imagine if you're in the middle of a battle, you're on a horseback, you're on camelback, very quickly the Prophet ﷺ would tie the imama. Some people, the imama has to be like perfection. The exact angle, the exact wrap. It has to be ironed a certain way. Rasulullah ﷺ wouldn't wear the imama like that. He would quickly just put it on. And subhanAllah, I remember in South Africa, it was kind of funny. The principal, Mullah Abdul Hamid Sahab, Hafidhullah, his office was downstairs. When you leave the classrooms and you're about to enter the masjid, his office was there. So his office, on the outside, when you look, it's a mirror. So you can see your reflection. But on the inside, it's see-through. So he can see everyone outside, but for everyone else, it's a mirror. So after Asr, he would give the lecture sometimes. And he would say, I see a lot of you students, you're wearing the imama. What is your intention? Are you wearing it so you look nice? So people can say, wow, look at this guy, sunnah, he looks so nice with the imama. Is that your intention, or is your intention the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? He says, the reason why I ask is because a lot of you guys probably don't know, but that mirror that you see on the outside, for me it's see-through. I see all of you guys all the time coming there and checking yourself out. He said, make your intentions right. The imama is there for the sunnah, not to make a fashion statement. So subhanallah, here's what we see. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he entered Makkah. and he was wearing a black turban. And many other occasions, Rasulullah ﷺ, he would wear a black turban, as we see in the next narration. عن جعفر بن عمرو بن الحريث عن أبيه قال, he says, رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يخطب على المنبر وعليه عمامة سوداء. He says that I saw the Prophet ﷺ, he was giving khutbah on the minbar, on the pulpit. And on the head of Rasulullah ﷺ, during the khutbah, he was wearing a black turban, a black imamah. So, in other narrations, which are not in the Shama'il, we learn the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he did wear a green imamah. At times he did also wear white imamah. And at times Rasulullah ﷺ actually wore a yellow colored imamah. Not like bright yellow, you know. Yellow is like a darker tinge. The Prophet ﷺ, he did wear that on occasion as well. So respected listeners, when it comes to the imamah, another very interesting thing, the believers together with Rasulullah ﷺ, they would wear the imamah and they would wear the turban on their heads. Together with them, there are reports in the battle of Badr and in other battles as well. The angels which descended from the heavens as aid, as assistance to the Prophet ﷺ and the believers, those angels that came down, muta'ammimin, they were also wearing imamas. And some of them mentioned yellow imamas specifically in the battle of Badr. So subhanallah, you can see some people, they will say, you know, imama, lungi, or whatever sunnahs that are there. Some people, they will say, you know, the reason why the Prophet ﷺ wore it is because it's an Arab thing. Na'udhu billah. I say, you know, it's Arab culture, it's an Arab thing, that's why he did it. Turban, you know, this is an Afghan thing. The shawl, this is an Afghan thing. You know, Afghans, Afghani people do it. Imama, kufi, thawb, this is, you know, cultural things. Subhanallah. What culture did the angels follow? That's the important question. Were the angels Afghan angels? Or were they Arab angels? Angels do not have a country that they belong to. Angels are from Jannah. And they're pure from lineage and from background and country and language and this and that. The angels wore it, what does that show you? That it's a pure thing. The angels did it, what does it show you? It is something that is pak, it is something that is respectable, it is something that is honorable. Right? So inshallah, this is something we should all, you know, of course, every day it's going to be hard to wear imamah. Once in a while, wear the imamah if you can, and at least, you know, at least have love for the imamah. At least love it in our hearts. You know, if you see in your imamah, say, MashaAllah, this is the great sunnah of our Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You know, I remember, just came to my mind right now, I remember when I was in elementary school, and I started wearing, you know, the kurta to school, in public school, and a lot of people were looking at me, and the ajib thing is, the non-Muslims, they were the ones that came up to me and said, wow, you're wearing your cultural clothing? Man, thumbs up to you, that's amazing, I respect you, man, that's awesome. You know, I'm not gonna lie to you, I would be too embarrassed to come to school with my traditional clothes. You know, I can only do that on our holidays at home, but I don't have the courage to do it. He said, man, that's amazing, I respect you for that. The only people that gave me a problem were who? Muslims. They said, why are you wearing this, man? This is not fard, this is not wajib. Why are you wearing this? This is extreme. Just mix in with the people. You don't need to do all this. And then I remember one day, I decided to wear an imamah. And oh man, the stares that I got on that day. And I remember in particular, one person came up to me, Muslim. And he said, look, first you started off with the topi, you know. Then you increased and then suddenly you're wearing a kurta. And then now you're wearing an imamah. This has just got too much, man. You're too much. I said, Jazakallah khair, brother. Allah reward you. So subhanallah, you see, The sunnah should not put us off. The sunnah should not make you feel indifferent towards somebody because they want to practice something good. The sunnah should do what to you? It should bring delight into your heart. And wallahi, this is something that makes me sad to say. That, a lot of times, you go grocery shopping, you go outside somewhere, and visibly people can see that you're a Muslim, and you know that they're Muslim, but because you're dressed a certain way, because there's a beard hanging from your chin, people are like slipping and sliding through the aisles to avoid you. And subhanallah, when you see a Muslim, there's a lady, mashallah, maybe she's wearing hijab, and wallahi, your heart becomes so happy that look, of all the hundreds of people that are in this grocery store, there's one sister that's a believer in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Allahu Akbar. Allah give you strength, my dear sister. You feel so happy. Your heart is in enjoyment. And then when you come to say salam to the husband, your heart gets broken because he's shifting through the aisles. Like an NFL player juking you out. He's juking you and spinning away so that he avoids you. And then you're like, subhanallah. Brother, I just wanted a salam. I'm just so happy to see there's another Muslim. Aren't you happy to see another Muslim? Shouldn't, the apparent sunnahs make you happy and put a smile on your face? Subhanallah, such words which bring such sadness to a person's heart. We've heard people say things that, these people in the masjid, they got their pants above their ankles like there's a flood outside. There's a flood. Their pants are above the ankles. It looks so horrible. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The Prophet ﷺ would wear his pants ila nisf as-saq, right? To the middle of the calf he would wear, that high. Can we say, na'udhu billah, that the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is something that doesn't look nice and it makes us feel uncomfortable and there's a flood coming in and we're making fun? Na'udhu billah. We have to be very, very careful. And this is going to come also later on in the chapter on the eating of the Prophet ﷺ, that Rasulullah ﷺ, he would eat with 3 fingers and he would lick his fingers. So Hafiz ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, in that chapter he mentions, be careful, beware, be very, very attentive. Watch your tongues and do not say anything against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That licking your fingers is, na'udhu billah, it is gross. It is, not sanitary. It is this or it is that. Be very, very careful. Because pronouncing dislike towards the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it could lead one to disbelief. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmatullahi said this. Be very, very careful, respected brothers and sisters. If we can't do it, if you can't do it, no problem. Make dua and ask Allah for tawfiq. But never look down on the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The sunnah should make you happy. That Allahu Akbar. Look how prominent our deen is. Look how it's been preserved, that from 1400 years, people are still trying to implement the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. That should make you happy. That should make you proud. That look, the sunnah of my Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it is alive since 1400 years. In this day and age of fasad, of corruption, of dunya, of people chasing their desires, the sunnah of my Prophet, the signs of my religion, it's still apparent amongst the people. Alhamdulillah, I'm happy. Every sunnah should make you happy. Every time you go outside and you see a hijab, that should make your heart burst with happiness. And especially these rare sunnahs that are being looked down upon. And subhanallah, there's a great book written by Mufti Hussein Kadodia, hafidhahullah ta'ala. He's a teacher in South Africa. He has a book, the whole book is about the head covering and their imamah. The name of the book, The Crown of the Believer. The crown. So the imamah and the, head covering. This is like a crown for a believer. This is like our, it's an honorable thing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring it alive amongst all of us. The next hadith عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنه قال رضي الله عنهما قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا اعتم سدل عمامته بين كتفيه. When the Prophet ﷺ would wear an imama, he would make the tail or the shamla, the end portion of the imama, he would make it hang between his shoulders, between the shoulder blades. So there are different narrations. Generally, the Prophet ﷺ, he would let the tail of the imama between the shoulders in the back. Sometimes it would be on the left shoulder. Sometimes it would be hanging in front on the left, sometimes in front on the right shoulder. And sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would actually have two shamlas. So two tails coming out from the back end of the imama. This was also one of the methods which the Prophet ﷺ wore it. The last hadith of this chapter, it is mentioned, the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave khutbah, and upon his head there was an oily strip of cloth, isabatun dasma. So sometimes the Prophet alayhi salam, he would cover his head either with the full imama, but sometimes, and this passed before, when Rasulullah ﷺ would oil his hair, he would put on like a strip of cloth which would absorb and soak up all of the oil. This was also one of the things which the Prophet ﷺ wore on his head. The next chapter, inshallah, which we are going to cover, باب ما جاء في صفة إزار رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is with regards to the izar or the undergarment of the Prophet ﷺ, which today we call the lungi, right? So first and foremost, the general habit of the Prophet ﷺ is that the pants at that time, it was like how we wear ihram today. It's just a towel and you wrap it around. That's how the undergarment of Rasulullah ﷺ used to be. It is mentioned that Rasulullah ﷺ, he purchased pants, but he never got the chance to wear them. But he praised the wearing of the pants. And many of the companions, radiallahu anhum, in front of the Prophet ﷺ, they would wear pants, and the Prophet ﷺ never prohibited them. So this shows you that even the pants, besides the lungi, the pants is a good thing, because it fulfills the general objectives of the Sharia behind why you wear clothes. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor Banu Adam, human beings, the children of Adam alayhi salam? What is the purpose of the clothing? Is to cover the satr, to cover the awrah, and make sure the shame of human beings is concealed. That's the purpose. So with pants, more so, and in a better manner, pants do what? They conceal the awrah. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he praised the wearing of pants. Although he never had a chance to wear them himself, he would generally wear the lungi, right? عن أبي بردة رضي الله عنه قال أخرجت إلينا عائشة رضي الله عنها كساء ملبدا. Aisha رضي الله عنها, she took out for us a patched piece of cloth, and she pulled out a lungi which was very, very coarse, very, very thick, very, very rough material. And what did she say? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he left this world while he was wearing these two pieces of clothing. So the top portion was patched. You guys know what patched means. When it gets holes or it gets damaged, you don't just throw it away, you patch it up. You sew something onto it to cover the hole. It was patched. And the bottom garment to cover the lower body, this was a very rough, thick piece of garment. And the scholars of hadith, they mention the point that we learn from this is that when the Prophet ﷺ, you see, after the battle of Khaybar, a lot of riches started coming to the hands of the Muslims. Before Khaybar, Muslims were very, very poor. They didn't have a chance to have anything. But after Khaybar, to a certain degree, wealth started coming into the hands of the Muslims. So when the Prophet ﷺ left this world, it was much after Khaybar. There was a lot of chance for getting good garments, getting good things, good food, and living a better lifestyle. But still, the fact that Rasulullah ﷺ left this world and he was still dressed like this, what does that show you? That shows you that all the way till the end of his Mubarak life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the dunya never entered his heart. He was never a person that in his heart he said, okay, now the wealth is coming in, let us start wearing the nice, expensive, nice, fine material. No, the Prophet ﷺ never cared about those things. The way he was in the beginning in Makkah, even after the wealth started coming in, nothing changed about the Prophet ﷺ. He still lived very, very humbly. The next hadith, one of the companions radiallahu anhu, he says, بَيْنَ أَنَا أَمْشِي بِالْمَدِينَةِ. He says, I was walking somewhere in Medina Munawwara when suddenly a man behind me said, lift your izar, lift your lungi. فَإِنَّهُ أَتْقَى وَأَبْقَى. Because indeed, if you lift it, that is closer to piety, and that is better and more lasting for your clothing. So he heard from behind him, someone shouted to him, lift your izar, don't let it drag on the floor, don't let it be below the ankles, lift it up, because that's closer to taqwa, and that is also more lasting for your garment. So he says, I turned around and suddenly what did I see? It is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that told me this. فَقُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. I said, O Messenger of Allah, this is, it's a simple garment which has black stripes, and it's a very simple garment. Right? So, if it's a little bit below my ankles, what's the problem? It's a very simple garment. It's not going to bring pride inside of me. And even if it scrapes the floor and it gets damaged a little bit, it's not an expensive cloth that I'm really, really possessive and worried about it, that I have to keep it really nice. It's very old. It's probably ready to go in the garbage soon anyway. So this companion radiallahu anhu, he kind of said this to the Prophet alayhi salam to give an explanation why the garment was below his ankles. Right? So look at what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him. He said, أَمَا لَكَ فِيَّ أُسْوَةٌ. Is there not in me a beautiful example and role model for you? Is there not for you inside of me, like my lifestyle, me who I am, the way I do things, am I not a beautiful role model and example for you? In other words, even if it's an old garment, even if it's about to go to the garbage, even if it's not putting pride inside of you, I don't keep my pants below my ankles. So you should also keep your pants above the ankles, just like how the Rasul ﷺ does so. Right? So he says, فَنَظَرْتُ. I looked down and I saw that the izar of the Prophet ﷺ was to halfway at the shin, halfway of the calf area. So the Prophet ﷺ, he actually would keep the garments, the lower garment, quite high. But it is permissible to keep it up to the ankles. Below the ankles, this is not allowed, because it can lead a person to pride. Right? And some people, they might say, well, I don't have pride, so what's wrong if I put my pants below my ankle? How can we be so sure? Right? Pride is something, it's very hidden inside of a person's heart, You can't always tell. You may think you're not prideful. You may think you don't have hypocrisy. You may think we're free of all these diseases. They're so hidden, they're so subtle. We may not know, but it could be there. Right? And that's why the ulama always mention that the moment you deem yourself pure from something, that is when it attacks inside of you. Right? The moment you say to yourself, no, I don't have pride, now pride finds its way inside. The moment you say to yourself, no, I'm sincere, no man, I got sincerity, I have ikhlas, I'm not an insincere person. The moment you say that and believe that, what happens? Insincerity and lack of ikhlas, it's going to find its way into your heart. And subhanAllah, that's why Hasan Basri, radiyallahu anhu, rahimahullah, all these great people, they say when we met the companions, one of the salient features of all of them, one quality that they all had, they would accuse themselves and suspect themselves of hypocrisy. They would say, maybe I have nifaq, maybe I'm a munafiq, maybe it's there, but I can't see it. So we learn from this one thing, respected listeners. Don't, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Don't deem ourselves to be so pure. Don't always think good of ourselves. Part of being a good person is to sometimes suspect ourselves, right? The next chapter, Babu ma ja'a fi mishyati Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the chapter on the walking of the Prophet alayhi salam. Or actually, I think I missed one. Where's qina'? Oh, that's coming after. Okay, so the walking of the Prophet alayhi salam, most of these ahadith, they actually already passed in the beginning chapter. When it was mentioned, when he would walk, it was as if he was going down a hill. And when he would walk, he would vigorously take his steps as if he had a purpose and objective. Not how you see people walking today. No purpose, no objective. Time is passing. It's okay, I really don't have anything to do, When Umar radiallahu anhu saw the young men of his time, when they would walk like this, very lazily and no purpose, he would hit them. And he'd say, where are you going? Do you have a purpose? If you're going to walk somewhere, walk like you mean it. Otherwise, sit down and do something good for your life. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he would walk, he walked like he had a maqsad. I have a purpose. I have a destination that I'm going. So this is how Rasulullah ﷺ, he would walk. And in the first hadith, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, subhanallah, look at what he says. He says, I have not seen anything more beautiful than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was as if the sun flows in his face. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at it. It was as if the sun flows in his face. So they say that what this means is, he was comparing the radiance and the noor on the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was comparing it to the radiance of the sun. Right? And some say no, what it means is, just like how the sun, it flows through an orbit, falak. It goes through a specific orbit, how it moves around. So what Abu Hurairah was saying is that husn and jamal and noor, beauty and radiance, just like the sun moves in its falak, it moves in its orbit, noor and jamal and beauty and excellence, it would orbit through the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahu Akbar. Just like the sun moves and orbits, beauty would orbit in the face of the Prophet ﷺ. And then he says, وَمَا رَأَيْتُ أَحَدًا. I have not seen anyone that would walk faster than Rasulullah ﷺ. It was as if the earth would fold for him. La ilaha illallah. Like if the earth is folding for you, what's happening? It's like your destination is being pulled towards you. It's coming closer to you. The earth is, like when you're walking in the airport, right? And then there's those, I don't know what they're even called, man. You have the elevator, escalator, and then you have the horizontal one. What's it called? Anyone know? I don't even know what it's called. It's that thing, you guys know what I'm talking about. It is, all the people that are walking, they're walking at normal speed. You just stand on that thing and you're moving, And then if you walk on there, what happens? You're going way faster than everybody that's on the normal ground, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, when he would walk, it was as if the earth is being folded. He would go very, very fast. So he says, إِنَّا لَنُجْهِدُ أَنفُسَنَا وَإِنَّهُ لَغَيْرُ مُقْتَرِث. He says, we would exert ourselves, as if we were huffing and puffing, وَهُوَ غَيْرُ مُقْتَرِث, and he was completely at ease. He's just walking normal. He's not exerting himself, he's just normal. But for us to keep up with him, we're like struggling, we're trying. We have to, exert ourselves. So subhanallah, we learn from this, Rasulullah ﷺ again, he was a strong man, He was fit, he was in shape, and this is how he would walk. That other people, they would struggle to keep up with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next hadith, or the next chapter, is with regards to the qina' of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, this chapter only has one hadith. What does qina' mean? Qina' refers to that piece of cloth that would suck up the oil. When the Prophet ﷺ would oil his hair and his beard, he would put this cloth on top so that the imama and the kufi and the topi, they do not become soaked up with oil. First, the cloth would go on top, the qina'. Then on top of the qina', he would put the head covering. So, there's only one hadith in this chapter where they say the Prophet ﷺ, he would do this so abundantly that it looked as if the clothes of the Prophet ﷺ were the clothes of a person who would sell oil. Right? And ajib thing here, the commentators on this hadith, they say, don't get the wrong picture here. That the clothes of the Prophet ﷺ, it looked like he was an oiler, a person, a merchant of oil. Don't think, na'udhu billah, that it was as if the Prophet ﷺ looked unkempt and untidy, not neat. I'm not even going to say the word dirty because this is not munasib for Rasulullah ﷺ. Right? Don't ever think that this means that's how the Prophet ﷺ carried himself. And he mentions a few riwayat. Imam Razi rahmatullah alayhi says, in the entire life of the Prophet ﷺ, not once did a fly ever sit onto the Prophet ﷺ. That's how clean he was. That a fly would never dare come and sit on the clothes or the body of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi also quotes the narrations where he says, no lice ever came into the hair of the Prophet ﷺ. And no flea or insect ever sucked blood out from the body of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, brothers and sisters, for us, we're probably thinking, well, I never had lice also, and I never got bit by a mosquito. Yeah, right, you probably did get bit by a mosquito before, but some of us might think, well, these things never happened to us also. That's also very possible. But remember, living in the middle of the desert, living in the middle, of a place where these things are very, very common. The masjids would not even have a carpet. The masjids were soil on the floor. So homes also, little mud huts, you put them together, people would sleep and live like this. But still, even though these things were so common amongst the, common folk, never with Rasulullah ﷺ. He was always very, very clean. So just a couple more ahadith here before we wrap up. The next chapter is on the sitting of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And before I get into this chapter, respected listeners, one thing just to keep in mind is that if you notice something in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his ta'limat and his teachings that he would give the people, right? Don't lower the garment below the ankles because it can cause pride. Right? Don't wear certain colors because it could give off certain effects. Right? You learn something that the way you dress, the way you eat, the colors you wear, it leaves a certain effect on the way that you live. And subhanallah, what more beautiful and perfected and complete way of life is there than the way of the Prophet ﷺ? So if you do it the way he did it, the desired effect on our lives, inshallah, it will become apparent. Now, some of us might think, if I sit this way or I sit that way, what's the difference? If my pants are below the ankle or above the ankle, how is that going to make a difference on my life? It does. It does. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he gave us specifically these types of ta'limat. And they would be very, very strict on this, respected listeners. It's mentioned about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. When he was on his deathbed, remember Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he passed away as a shaheed. He was stabbed in Salatul Fajr many times. And from the loss of blood and the sickness that took place afterwards, that's how he passed away. So you can imagine, it's a painful death. He was suffering. While he's on his deathbed, respected listeners, he sees a young man is passing by, and with the little voice that he had, with the little amount of energy that he had, he said, call this person, bring him here, call him. When this person comes, what did Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu tell him? He said, my son, your garments are dragging below the ankles, lift them up. Allahu Akbar. The last words that this man has, the last bit of energy that he can build within himself, he's telling the people, follow the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. Don't let your garments go below the ankles. Right? So they took these things very, very serious. They took it to heart because they knew it has an effect on us. Right? So there was one person, he came to the scholar, he came to the shaykh, and he said, all these things you guys are talking about, man, what's the difference? I eat with my right hand or I eat with my left? It's not going to make a difference. I wear a purple shirt, red shirt, or I wear a white shirt. What difference is it going to make? It's not going to make a difference. So the shaykh looked at him and he said, really? It's not going to make a difference? He said, okay, I have something to tell you. Donkey. You're a donkey. So when he told him this, he called him a donkey. What happened? Person, who are you talking to? You're talking to me. He got angry, he got mad. He said, come outside, we're going to fight right now. Come. You're calling me this bad word. So the alim said, look at you. He said, from this word, donkey. Is it a nice word? Is it a good word? Is it a noble word? It's a very lowly word, donkey. But he said, look at what this word did to you. Your eyes are red. Your face is puffing out. The veins are coming out in your forehead. Your fists are clenched. You're shaking. Look at what effect it's had on your body. This small word, donkey. Look what it did to you. So he said, oh young man, if donkey had this much effect on you, don't you think the sunnah teachings of Rasulullah ﷺ, when you bring it in your life, is not going to have an effect on you? If donkey made you this red, then the sunnah will make you how pure. If donkey has this much power, imagine how much power and athar is in the beautiful sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ. Right? Amazing. So, the jilsa, the method that the Prophet ﷺ, the way that he would sit, alayhi salam. And there's 3 hadith here, inshallah. We'll cover 3, not too long. The first hadith, عن قيلة بنت مخرمة أنها رأت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في المسجد. She says, this woman, this sahabiya, she saw the Prophet alayhi salam in the masjid, and he was sitting in the qurfusa style. What is qurfusa? Qurfusa means when the buttocks are on the floor and both knees are up in the air, and then you grab both legs like this. Right? Can someone demonstrate? Just like that. How Qari Muhib is sitting. Legs up, knees are there, and then you fold the arms around the legs. You tie it like that. So remember, in the desert life, there was not a lot of walls. For us, it's easy to lean on the wall. So for them to get a rest, they would sit like that, because it kind of puts your body at rest. And sometimes what they would do is they would take a shawl, they would tie it around the back, and then tie it around the legs. So now even the arms are resting. Even the arms are resting now, and what's holding up the legs is the shawl. Very simple, mashallah, desert lifestyle is how the people live. So she says, I came inside the masjid and I saw Rasulullah ﷺ was sitting like this. And she said, when I saw the Prophet ﷺ, the mutakhashshi', the one who is very, very fearful of Allah, because when he was sitting, he was contemplating about something. He was contemplating and thinking about the akhirah. Now think about it, respected listeners. Think about this. If someone is sitting in this position, this is very informal, isn't it? You're just relaxing, you're at ease. If someone is, very formal, president, minister, you would expect them to be sitting how? But she says, when I saw the Prophet sitting just like this, she says, "Ur'idtu." I became so fearful that I started shivering. I became so, because the Prophet ﷺ, it's not about the external, it's not about the way you're sitting like this or your table. The internal nur of the Prophet ﷺ, the effect of his ibadah, the effect of his relationship with Allah was so powerful that despite him sitting very, very humbly, the ru'ub, the awe that was placed on this woman, she started shivering out of fear. And subhanallah, the end of the hadith in another narration, it's not here in the Shama'il actually, Imam Tirmidhi just brought this much, but the end of it is in another narration, where the Prophet ﷺ, someone came and said, Ya Rasulullah, this woman is here shivering out of fear because of looking at you. And Rasulullah ﷺ was engrossed in such thought, he didn't even look. He sat sitting down and he basically told the woman, "Oh woman, Hawwini ala nafsik, take it easy on yourself. I'm just the servant of Allah." And he didn't even look. And she says, the moment that these words came out from the Prophet ﷺ, like the touch of a button, immediately all my shivering and my fear, completely it stopped right away. This is how the Prophet ﷺ was. And subhanAllah, we learn from this, brothers and sisters. The real effect in our lives is not from materials. The real effect in our life is from what? It's from a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why she was so fearful. That's why the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, they would shake in their boots. They would be shaking. Why? Because of the internal effects of the Prophet ﷺ. And the second hadith mentions Rasulullah ﷺ was seen lying in the masjid with one foot over the other. So sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, he would rest in the masjid and he would lie one foot over the other. And the next chapter that we have is about the pillow of the Prophet ﷺ. We won't go into it fully, but there are a few narrations which mention sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, he would lean on a pillow, he would lean on a cushion when he was addressing the companions radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And at times, when he would mention something very, very important, from that pillow that he was leaning on, he would sit up. So that now the people can see whatever he's going to mention right now, it's something very, very important. Because he's not leaning back, he got up from the pillow now. So then they would know that it's something which is very, very important. And at times, instead of a pillow, there are a few narrations which mention that Rasulullah ﷺ, he would lean upon people, especially before the demise of Rasulullah ﷺ. He would take support of two people and he would attend the masjid. SubhanAllah, how much the Prophet ﷺ loved the masjid and salah. He would attend on the shoulders of two people while the feet of Rasulullah ﷺ would drag. He was not having enough energy to even lift his legs to step. The feet were dragging and he was holding his upper body. And the two people were supporting him. So like this, in the old age of the Prophet ﷺ, he would sometimes lean on a pillow. Other narrations mention, he would use the staff. And at times he would, in the end of his life, he would lean on the people to attend the salah with congregation. Inshallah, we will end here. The next few chapters, the chapters which everybody likes, the eating habits of Rasulullah ﷺ. These are the easy sunnahs, right? Because we like kajur and we like the dates and we like all the nice stuff. Free sunnahs, we can say, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all tawfiq. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He grants us the love of the Prophet ﷺ, that He grants us the didar of the Prophet ﷺ in this world, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us in the next world to have shafa'ah of Sayyidina Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our progenies, our future generations, they bring alive the love and the sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May we be people of sunnah from our waking up to our sleep. May we be embodiments of the beautiful character and akhlaq of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruk wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khair.
Inshallah, next week our dars will start from Maghrib, after Maghrib Salah. Inshallah, after Maghrib Salah. So next week Maghrib will be around 6:15. We'll have our dars and inshallah we'll end by Isha Salah. And also, inshallah, Mufti Rohullah will be at Jummah tomorrow with us at Masjid Muhajireen. So inshallah, we'll start the talk at 12:40 and we'll end the talk by 1 o'clock, inshallah. So everyone who's free to attend Jummah tomorrow, inshallah, definitely come back. Jazakallah khairan.
Come with your imamas, inshallah. Jazakallah.